Well, hello, folks. This is Yamil Sued for Gun Talk Reviews. We're here in Phoenix, Arizona at the law offices of Tim Forshey. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
Hey, Tim, I got a question for you.
Hit it.
Title II, Class 3, accessories and guns.
Okay.
What's the legality of those for self-defense?
Well, great way to drain your bank account, first of all, right? They become somewhat addictive. But let's talk about the legality for self-defense. Again, there's no statute that says you can't use Class 3 firearms to defend yourself. But there's a lot of politicization about this. So it's very political. It's very social, criticism with regard to Class 3 firearms. So you have to be very aware of when and how you're using those. I would say that for home defense, they're perfectly fine. And in fact, I strongly encourage the use of suppressors for home defense. People say, why? Because your hearing is an incredibly important sense to survive a home invasion burglary. According to FBI data, over 80% of all home invasions involve at least two bad guys, not just one. So when you shoot the first bad guy you see with your non-suppressed firearm and your hearing is completely shot for the next 5 days or 20 years and you can't hear anything at all, can you hear that person's accomplice moving around in your kitchen now? Can you hear your children screaming down the hallway, Dad, there's a guy coming through my window. Dad, please help. Can you hear that? When the police show up 5 minutes from now and they come through your front door and they say, drop the weapon, and you turn and go, what? Because you can't hear them and you get shot to death by friendly fire, you're going to really wish you had your sense of hearing. So unless you have a much more understanding spouse than I do and you can keep your electronic hearing protector sitting on the end of your bed, I strongly suggest that your home defense firearms all be suppressed. Again, somebody's broken into your home, they've chopped through your front door, they've bashed it down with a crowbar, they've killed your dog, they're now attacking your safe room door where you're barricaded, they come through that door and you have a short-barreled rifle with a suppressor, that will be completely justifiable. You don't have any worries there whatsoever. It is a different analysis if you're going to carry Class 3 firearms out in public. I take my Class 3 firearms out in public when I'm going to use them at the range, when I'm going to shoot a match, when I'm going to go do long range shooting. Again, they stay in my bag, they stay in my locked gun case until I get to my destination. I use them for that purpose. I put them back into my locked case and take them back home and put them back in my safe. For self-defense, I would never ever use a Class 3 firearm outside of my home. There's just too much social judgment that's going to be passed on you by a prosecutor, a judge, a jury. You just don't want that headache. So out in public, again, you don't have a white painted ceiling 2 feet above your head. The sound repercussions are not going to be nearly as bad in a Walmart parking lot as they're going to be in your living room. So I'm worried about your long-term hearing loss, but I'm much more worried about your ability to survive the next 5 minutes of your life. And you need hearing to be able to do that. In a dark home at 3 in the morning, hearing is probably your most important sense. And you've completely lost it if you fire off a round or rounds with no hearing, with no suppressor. So big advocate of suppressors. Short-barreled rifles are much easier to move around with a suppressor on them in your home than a regular 16-inch or longer barrel. So go ahead and use your 10.5-inch barreled AR with your Surefire suppressor, and you've got a very compact, maneuverable unit that is very, very effective for home defense and completely justifiable. So I'm a big believer in that. The next issue that brings up is how do you acquire Title II, or what most people call Class 3 firearms. And there's 3 legal ways that a person can acquire those. You can acquire them as an individual, you can acquire them through an NFA gun trust, or you can acquire them through a corporation. So let's talk about number 1 and number 3, acquire them as an individual. It's the easiest way, it's also the cheapest way. It's also the most trouble-plagued way. And what do I mean by that? You and I both have spouses, and we have family members, we have adult children. If my wife borrows my truck when I'm in the shower to go to Costco to pick up some dog food, gets involved in a traffic accident, breaks her ankle, they try calling me, but I'm in the shower and I don't hear my phone. They transport her to the hospital, they impound the car. During the process of impounding the car, they're required to search the car. They find a gun bag in the back seat with a suppressor in it that I own as an individual that my wife is not able to legally own or possess. My wife and I have both committed a very serious federal felony right there. If I have a situation where my wife is not a non-allowed user, then that problem goes away. So the individual method of ownership is not a good idea. Corporate ownership. Every single officer in the corporation has the ability to own or possess the item. So if you're the vice president of my corporation, you can take my suppressor that my corporation owns and you can go use it just like I can. Perfectly legal. The problem with that is much more expensive to set up a corporation than a trust. You have to attend to that corporation every year. You have to update it with the Corporation Commission. You have to have a stat agent appear, a statutory agent appointed. Usually you have to pay those people. Usually they're lawyers. You have to constantly amend the corporation if anybody pops in or pops out. That costs more money. It's a very cumbersome way to do it. Some people say, well, I already have a corporation. I'll just plug it into that. You don't want to do that. Last problem with corporate ownership is it's publicly discoverable. I Google your name, I find out that you're the vice president of a corporation on the Corporation Commission website. I can then subpoena during a lawsuit the documents that show what assets that corporation owns. I now find out about your gun collection. If you have a trust, an NFA trust, it's completely confidential. Nobody knows about it except for you and the ATF when you submit it. It's much cheaper to set up. You name whoever you want as co-trustees or successor trustees, what we now call responsible persons, and those responsible persons have the ability to own or possess the item as well. And NFA trusts are much cheaper, probably 1/4 the price on average of setting up a corporation. And then, of course, once you pay, you're done. You don't have to pay money every year to maintain that trust. So the way to go if you're going to get into the Class 3 world and obtain a suppressor or an SBR, or if you can afford it, God bless you, a machine gun, is to set up an NFA trust and do it that way. And again, much easier, quicker, and cheaper than people think.
Tim, that is so cool. That's something I didn't know. There were so many ways of acquiring Class 3 weapon. I know I did one almost 30 years ago, and it was personal, fingerprints and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And it took a long time, but now that there's so many options, like the trust, and you can get a trust done in a couple of days, right?
Oh yeah, they're very. I mean, it's about 3 to 4 hours worth of work for an attorney, and but I can almost always turn those around. My daughters are in bed. I go into my home office. I crank them out usually at night after hours and have them ready for the client the next morning. So yeah, pretty easy.
That's great. Well, so guys, like always, keep sending those questions in. We need your questions. We want to know what you want to know, so Tim can answer them and share more information and more knowledge. And like always, guys, please remain healthy, stay safe, and have fun at the range.